So today we've got the most fascinating sleep doctor at Made to Thrive, and her name is Dr. Stella Iacovides. She's both a friend and a person I've known for many, many years who's highly credible in the sleep world. And so it's going to be a privilege to pick her brain and hear from her as she's researched sleep over many, many years. So Dr. Stella, welcome to the Made to Thrive show.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Cool.
Nice
So
to be
just
here.
tell us a little bit about yourself. Why do you have this passion for sleep, and where you're working, and what your research involves?
Okay, so I started doing research in my honors year in physiology, and physiology as a whole fascinates me. The fact that we get to learn everything about every part of our being and why it works. So it wasn't hard for me to be convinced to stay there. So I stayed for my master's and I stayed for my PhD. And I did specialize in pain and sleep. And sleep is something that you can't really get out of once you get in, because we realize how little we actually understand and know. So I suppose I'm in a deep hole. I'm happy to be there, obviously. Okay. But I'm in a hole that has so much exploration still to do. So yes, I'm happy I found myself in an unexplored, largely unexplored field. I mean, a lot has been done, but a lot still needs to be done.
Great. And you've had research articles published in prestigious journals like Sleep. You've been on Carte Blanche talking about sleep. So your voice is out there as an expert in the sleep field. And I'm just grateful that you can be on the Made to Thrive show and give value to the listeners and to the audience in terms of how important sleep is. So why is sleep so important to our health, Dr. Stella?
Sure. That's a very loaded, quite hard question to answer. But I suppose if we put it in context, you can think, well, from a drive or an evolutionary point of view, we are meant to sleep for a third of our lives. And this time seems pretty unproductive, unsocial. It seems to be quite useless. So why do it if it is indeed that useless? So as we are doing more and more research, we're finding out more reasons as to why we sleep. And the question probably more is there anything that does not benefit from our sleep? So we're finding that with all the research questions that have been explored, that every part of our physical and mental being requires sleep as a sort of a reset button. So now with all the sleep deprivation studies, they've quantified and shown not only associations, but even sometimes causal effects of lack of sleep in the with consequences in the cardiovascular system. It weakens your immune system. It increases your chance of a metabolic disease, so like type 2 diabetes. It increases cognitive disease like Alzheimer's. It reduces your ability to function morally or ethically, to make good decisions, to be creative in the day. It impacts on your relationships. So really what we actually need to be asking ourselves is there something that doesn't benefit from sleep? Because everything we are exploring shows that this big drive to sleep is there for very many reasons. And they're extensive, both mental and physical.
So I mean, mental, physical, emotional benefits from sleep, but obviously sleep's been studied for a long time. What are the big sort of areas of health? You mentioned cardiovascular, you mentioned sort of neurodegenerative conditions. Where have sort of the biggest markers been shown in sort of sleep research benefiting our health?
So the immune system is a big one. So we now know that if you are not getting adequate sleep, your immune system almost can't build its armor of defense against even common viruses, the flu, the colds, so anything really. It even compromises your ability to generate an immune response after a vaccination, which is fascinating for me, because that should be a question to say, well, before you go and get your flu vaccine every year, does the nurse actually say to you, hey, Steve, did you get your 8 hours sleep for the last few nights? And if you say no, the answer should be, well, come back after you've got your 8 hours sleep, because you'll build up a way better immune response following the vaccination. And
Fantastic.
So obviously the chances of you getting it. So I mean,
now, that's very important. I'm going to dive in here because we're in this crazy time, and who's declaring from the heavens that we should make sure that we're getting quality and quantity sleep? What we're hearing about is masks and social distancing. What we're hearing about is make sure that you keep your distance from people at the shops, and don't touch this, and don't go here, and don't go into hospitals. And people are really scared, they're frightened, they're filled with anxiety. But we're not hearing is protect your sleep at all costs. And people are watching more video, more screen time. They getting into Netflix. They're compromising their sleep, and what they don't realize is they're compromising in the immune system. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no data to show particularly on the coronavirus, but all the other data would support exactly that. So if you extrapolate, it would be that sleep should be a vital part of building our immune for this virus. I obviously do not discourage any of the current guidelines that we should be wearing masks and social distancing. So of course, all of that is important to stop the spread. But the reality is that if we do have to all get it at some point, the way some professors are saying, or if we are going to be vaccinated against it one day, hopefully, either way, one means by which we can boost our immune system to either get through the disease or to build a better response following a vaccination would be to increase or better your sleep quality and quantity.
But Dr. Stella, isn't it more important to get better sleep than to do all these other sort of guidelines? Who's shouting from the rooftops that sleep's the most important for your immunity over this time? Because I'm not hearing it on social media. I'm not hearing it on the news. I'm not hearing doctors come, after the presidential address and say to us, sleep is crucial for your immune system. Make sure you protect it. Make sure you've got good sleep hygiene. Why are the doctors not talking about sleep?
It's something that all of us in sleep research keep saying, but it's never voiced. I mean, I never hear it. You're quite right. The fact that this podcast is going on, and maybe the carte blanche thing last year is a rare phenomenon, because it really is not punted the way it should be punted. And there should be people going to schools explaining to the students how important sleep is. It should be part of the school routine, which is absolutely is not. So we do get taught, we get encouraged. So our medical aides will encourage us for eating healthily. They will reward us for that. They will reward us for physical activity. But that third pillar of health, and in fact, arguably, I would say that it is the most important pillar, because without that third, without sleep, the other two are compromised. So we encourage the other two. We even talk about it at schools and in the workplace. But sleep is the neglected one, and it's an apathy that has, I don't know, it's grown over the years in our social communities and in the work ethic. I don't know why this apathy for sleep is, but now we feel guilty for sleeping instead of working, and it's exactly the opposite of what we should be doing. You're saying, yeah, take a sleep, and that's where companies like NASA and Google, where I think we can all agree that we'd all like to work for them, encourage sleep. So they're one of the few, who do. But you're right, it's not being voiced enough. There's no education about sleep. So your average person won't know about the benefits or how badly your body will suffer, and your mind, if you don't sleep.
So we do need a response from the medical community, and maybe the School of Physiology at the University of Witwatersrand can, get onto social media and speak about sleep a little bit more. Yeah. Maybe there's a huge drive, but possibly we need some influencers, some high-performing, influencers in the business space, in the medical space, that can say how important sleep is for, productivity, creativity, just performance, efficiency, and hopefully that can get a message out there in terms of how important sleep is. So tell us a little bit about performance and sleep. How is our performance affected when we don't get adequate quality and quantity sleep?
So, I mean, we've all probably experienced it, that if you have a bad night's sleep, I guess we all feel groggy and drowsy and not so productive. So whether it's a physical performance, so a sportsman, or a mental performance, so in academia or a teacher or anything, it's always shown to be compromised, and we can all be our own case studies. You don't even really need research to tell you that. But research will support our own case studies about reduced efficiency and productivity. And sportsmen have gone out and said how important their sleeps are. It's just not enough. People are not emphasizing it enough. But if you go and dig, you will find people contributing their success to good sleep. But yeah, it's not out there enough.
And I mean, I wear an Aura ring. It measures my different quality stages of sleep: deep sleep, REM sleep. It gives me an overall quantity, how restless I am as well. You know, is quantity more important than quality, or is quality more important than quantity? And should everyone be measuring their sleep?
I don't think it's a bad idea that everybody measures their sleep. So even if it's just a subconscious sort of drive that will send us to bed a bit earlier, and then we measure our sleep the next day and we go, oh, we slept a whole 8 hours, and or my activity monitor is telling me I slept a whole 8 hours and I really performed nicely today. So even if it's a reflection tool or a driving, motivating tool to get better sleep, just an awareness, I suppose, then it is worth everybody tracking their sleep. I'm not entirely familiar with the Aura. From what I've seen, I think it measures your body temperature as a measure of a rhythm, which is good because it is a physiological response. But my issue with all of these things is that I don't think that they're entirely accurate to tell you about the quality of your sleep in terms of the stages. So the way that we measure sleep in the laboratory using polysomnography, where we're measuring the actual brainwave activity, is the gold standard. So, and it's the gold standard. And as far as I know, the only real way to say how much REM sleep or non-REM sleep one is getting. The activity devices that are commercially available, of course, are much easier to use, and they have their place. But I think in terms of research, you can only really tell about somebody's REM sleep, you know, how high their waves are, their deep sleep, how consolidated it is using polysomnography. It's a bit hard for these devices to extrapolate what's going on in the brain together what's going on in the eye movements and muscle atony. So all those things they're getting better. I think the devices are getting better, but I don't know that they're quite there yet. But it's worth the public investing, and even if it's just for awareness.
Yeah, I do think possibly they might not be accurate, you know, so they might not give you the actual readings that you need. But I do believe they are quite precise in that they make the same errors. So often it's about a comparative. So I really battle with my REM sleep. My deep sleep's really good, but I battle with my REM sleep. But the device will make the same error again and again. And so we can compare different nights to others, and you're comparing the same person. I think the problem is if you give your device to someone else, then it doesn't become precise at all. So my recommendation to my clients is whichever device you use, I think most important, it has to go into airplane mode, which mitigates or stops the RF, the radio frequencies, the high frequencies that a lot of these devices can emit, especially when you're trying to sleep and you want to try and avoid those. But it does make the same errors, and you can compare different nights and the different stages of REM and deep and light sleep. And I know for sure that when I don't get adequate, at least an hour of REM sleep, according to my Aura ring, then I do not cognitively perform well the next day. My deep sleep, very, very important for my performance when I'm running, when I'm exercising, when I'm training. It's just if I don't get good enough deep sleep, which is not often, then I struggle to exercise and train. I get very tired physically in the day. So tell us a little bit more about REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, and deep sleep, and the importance of these two stages in our sleep cycles.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to go back about your quality versus quantity.
Yes.
I think they go hand in hand.
Okay.
You need both quality and quantity, and the reason I say that is because if you cut sleep on either end of your night, then you will restrict one or the other of your sleep stages. So REM sleep is predominant in the second half of the night, and a lot of the time that's what we compromise when we're waking up early to get ourselves to work or to exercise early in the morning. It's what what children compromise to get to school on time, and it's honestly it's a travesty to do this when you realize the importance of what REM sleep does. So it has been linked, and dreaming actually. So we don't really fully understand dreaming, but we now are understanding that dreaming has a physiological role. One of the things that we know about dreaming is that it removes hard emotional disturbances in one's life. You sort of repeat it at night, maybe not in the exact context, but you repeat that emotional anxiety, but in an unstressful physiological environment. So all the hormones that cause you to react to that particular situation are now dampened down, so you get to experience it without the emotional pull around it. And so when you wake up the next day, you'll realize that often what was an absolute nightmare or something that was going to destroy your life the day before, when you wake up the next morning, somehow it's really not so bad. It's kind of like you've processed that news or that situation in your head again at night in an uncharged emotional environment, and you can better deal with it the following day. So that's one thing in REM sleep that's been associated with REM sleep. The other things with REM are, of course, memory and creativity. So there is so much that is linked to REM sleep. So waking up extra early to get that workout, or to get to school early, or to study early for your exam, I really encourage people to think twice about it. Do it later in the day, make some time, but don't impede on your sleep, which is always actually what we do. Is we choose to just encroach a little bit on the sleep. Where actually, if we knew the benefits, we hopefully would. And we have an option, of course. We're talking about an option now. In REM sleep, so deep sleep is also important, also for restorative functions, also for memory. So they play together in memory. So the one consolidates the memory, the one stores the memory. So there's a lot of, and then there's recall of memory. So those two stages work together in memory. But I think they work together hand in hand in a lot of things. We just don't fully understand. We don't fully understand the way, the synergy that they work with, because of course while we're researching, we knock out the one stage to investigate what effect that has, and then we knock out the other to investigate that effect. And if we're lucky, we'll bridge it. But it's not so easy.
Yeah, sure. And look, I do know personally my story, like last night, I got 1.5 hours of deep sleep, which was incredible, but I got 2 minutes of REM sleep. And I feel totally different compared to 4 nights ago. I had 2.5 hours of sleep of REM and 2.5 hours of deep. I had 5 hours of those two stages, and that next day, that following day, was incredible from a performance, from an energy point of view, from a cognitive point of view. So I definitely noticed different sort of behavioral patterns the next day based a lot on my sleep. And I think I agree with you. It's more important than our nutrition and our exercise. And in fact, I do believe that if we can measure and we can be aware of our sleep, we often change our food and our exercise to ensure we get the best quality and quantity sleep that we can get. And that is a huge determining factor for our health and our performance. So thank you for the breakdown of deep and REM sleep, and as well as the quantity that we need. Do you know much about Dr. Matthew Walker's research and just what happens from a cardiovascular point of view of heart attacks? 24% decrease the next day when people get an extra hour of sleep from daylight saving. Is that, how is that possible even?
Well, that's a shocker. I mean, that statement is an absolute shocker, and I'm not doubting it. But I'm saying it's ridiculous that we don't have that kind of information out there, and that you do have to go and read neurophysiologist or neurobiologist stuff. It should be known knowledge, how detrimental 1 hour of sleep loss would be. I have read Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, and I recommend it to anybody. It's not for a rocket scientist. It really is for the people out there, for everyone. And it's a great read, and it's a very enlightening read. His claims are all scientifically based, and that daylight saving, that study is incredible. I haven't seen any more research, but I don't discard what's been there. When you see the effects of sleep restriction on any one physiological function, it's very probable that is a real statistic.
Okay, great. Tell me about the emotional and physical, pain that we experience in this life, in this crazy life, how it affects our sleep, because I know this has been an area of research that you've really looked into.
So, well, we've got two, obviously, forms of pain, the emotional and the physical, and often they go together if it becomes a chronic issue. But in terms of physical pain, if anyone, I'm sure most of us have been unfortunate to have had physical pain at some stage in our life, and we know that will encroach into our sleep. So it will wake us up, you'll twist and turn, you may be lucky enough to go back to sleep, but in the end of the day, you still are breaking up your sleep. So you are fragmenting your sleep. And sleep fragmentation is a new sort of area of research, one that I'm currently looking at. And it's starting to maybe emerge that sleep fragmentation. So you might be sleeping for 8 hours, but if you're waking up throughout those 8 hours in random bursts, it may actually be worse than cutting your sleep on either side. Now, I'm not saying that as set in stone, but it is a theory it's a hypothesis that we're looking into. And it's a scary hypothesis because pain does that. Waking up as a young as a parent of a young child, that happens. It happens in the elderly to go to the toilet often, or some of us who go to, so there's a lot of reasons why we have broken sleep, but it seems to be also a big problem. So pain breaks your sleep, physical pain, and emotional pain probably does exactly the same because it's a stress, it's a stressor. And I'm sure that we've all found that when we wake up at night, for whatever the reason, whether it is just to go to the bathroom, if you're under immense pressure and you have an emotional pain of some sort, your brain just carries on ticking, and it's so difficult to go back to sleep. So again, it will cause a sleep fragmentation. So both forms of pain we need to try and address. So emotional pain and physical pain, there's now place for sort of awareness and mindful practices, and all those things seem to help on both accounts. But of course, it's not a quick fix like a pill. It's working through it. It's long term, and people are impatient. We're all impatient.
Great. Tell me about sleeping tablets, because that's become sort of a bit of a crisis in itself, and people are popping sleeping tablets to sleep, and they're taking a half a Stilnox for years and years. Is this the way to get sleep, and what are the long-term side effects of sleep?
Yeah. So it's exactly that. It's a crisis. We should not be taking those medications. And if you look in their inserts, that it will say for 2 weeks maximum. Now, I don't know a single person who started on a sleep drug, anyone, and only done it for 2 weeks. So the idea is great if it's about kickstarting your rhythm, your circadian rhythm, and getting into a new rhythm, and then you start with regular bedtime and wake time. So if it's just about kickstarting better sleep habits, then it's fine, but it needs to stop there. It cannot go on long term. It maybe gives people the satisfaction, so a subjective satisfaction that they've slept better. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it does. But what it's doing objectively to your sleep is where it becomes detrimental. So a lot of them do compromise on one of the other sleep stages. So you find yourself with less REM sleep, you find yourself with less deep sleep and with more light sleep. So they are definitely not a cure or a solution to difficult sleeping. And if some people feel better on them, they may do so temporarily, but then you build a resistance to them, and then you need to up the dose. And then up in the dose, or before that, you may feel groggy in the morning. So there's definitely side effects in terms of sleep and the next day performance that are not optimal for productivity and functioning, and even for us.
Good. Long-term research, Dr. Stella, on these sleep tablets in terms of cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, just early onset memory loss. What does the research say about chronic use of these sleeping tablets?
So I'm not entirely familiar with, I don't think we've done research. It would be quite difficult to do research on any pharmacological agent and then determine that is the reason for, Alzheimer's or something later on. But given our understanding of the sleep stages and how important they are for different physiological functions, so for cognitive decline and for memory, etc., if you know that the tablets are knocking out REM sleep and deep sleep, so reducing the amount that you do, and you know what a reduction in those sleep stages causes, what the result is physiologically or in health or ill health, then you can imply that those, of course, are not going to help your long-term health situation, whether it's cardiovascular, metabolic, cognition, whatever it is. So we can infer that they would cause or at least accelerate one of those.
Great. Now, you were on carte blanche, talking about junk light, what junk light is, how this blue light phenomena is affecting our sleep. And it was a fantastic little piece by carte blanche, and we'll put it in the show notes for all the listeners and for people watching this on YouTube. Tell me about junk light, how it affects our sleep, and what we should be doing about it.
So by junk light, I assume you're talking about blue light.
I'm talking about artificial light from any sort of artificial source, LEDs, fluorescents, halogens, computer screens, laptops, iPads, iPhones, any phone that you got that emits this junk light.
Yeah, so those the rays from these devices are damaging. They emit a very strong blue light, which actually also comes naturally from the sun. So it's not that the blue light itself is harmful. It's just that the timing is harmful and that we're throwing our rhythms out by using them throughout the day. So the blue light that comes, if you look at it from an evolutionary point of view, the blue light that comes from the sun, wakes us up and it keeps us awake, and then the sun goes down and it's time for bed. The trouble with these devices is that they're emitting that same light. And not only is it very, very far away into the sky, but it's right close to your eyes. So it gets right back to the retina and signals daytime and alertness as opposed to sleepiness close to bedtime. So what these devices do is they block melatonin, which is one of the signals that, we should be getting ready for bed. So it doesn't help with your sleep per se. It doesn't help with the maintenance or the initiation. It's the signal, it's the start sign, as opposed to helping generate sleep. So it doesn't generate sleep, but it's that signal. And of course, if you delay that signal because you're staring at your screen or your phone or even the TV, then that's why we have difficulty sleeping. So we may mistake ourselves for being insomniacs when actually it's just because we've been staring at these devices for too long. So we keep prolonging our signals of bedtime.
Okay.
So they are detrimental, and the trouble also is that this blue light can even cause this decrease in melatonin behind the eyelids. So even if we have these devices on and LED lights in our bedrooms and we are sleeping, we're still disrupting our sleep because that light goes to the back of our retina without us necessarily knowing. So these little devices are really messing up with our natural rhythms.
Is that why we need to ensure that we block out all the light in our bedroom, make sure that we got block out curtains, make
Yes.
sure that every single light that might emit any blue light is covered? And so to make sure
Absolutely.
that we don't leave a bathroom light on that's got an ADD that's coming into our room, affecting our quality of sleep. So that's really important. And what else can we do with regards to this light? You know, I'm wearing these yellow summer glow glasses from Blue Blocks. They block light from 400 to 460 nanometers, which is important just to minimize the screen, the blue light that I'm getting, the artificial light from the screens and from my phone. And then at night, I wear the orange lenses that block light from 400 to 550. And 550 is very important from what I know in the research, because it's not only the blue light, but the green light. And blue and green have a significant effect on melatonin, and melatonin is our most important antioxidant. You know, it's thousands times more stronger than, you know, vitamin C and vitamin E, as well as stronger than glutathione. So we need to protect our melatonin, and that's probably another crisis where people are taking a lot of melatonin to sleep and breaking the feedback loop where our bodies should be producing endogenous melatonin. So what else can we do from a light perspective other than blue blocking glasses and that?
So you're very disciplined with your glasses. I don't feel like most of us are, but that's great. And yes, if you have those glasses, absolutely wear them. I think that some TVs now are starting to have functions that you can reduce the amount of blue light, but I don't know that they're commercially available to most of us yet. And then, of course, on your laptops and your iPads, you can also change the shift to night shift on the iPhone, or I think it's also called night shift on the computers. So there are little things that we can do, but of course, ideally it would be best to put these things away at night and almost revert to how things used to be. And I'm not saying that we should go back to sitting around the fire, although the red light of a fire doesn't affect your eyes or your sleep. Funnily enough, or I suppose evolutionary, you know, it works. You know, we've forgotten how to socialize. We don't have conversations at night. We don't play games anymore with our families because we're all so busy on these devices all day long, and we're all guilty of it. We also push it onto our kids, and I feel like we're creating an even bigger sleep loss pandemic than what already exists. But I don't know how we get away from the actual devices, because I don't see that happening anytime soon unless all these manufacturers do put these things that kick into place by themselves. I don't think our eyes are going to ever get used to the blue light and help us sleep without it. Or maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but yes, I don't see it.
So we do have to be cognitive of, our light diet. I think our light diet is more important than our food diet. Our sleep diet, and how we sleep and our sleep hygiene is more important than our food and our movement. That I'm convinced of. And a lot of these things, if we can measure them through sleep, we'll, correct our light, get morning sun into our eyes, which is very, very important. Make sure that we eat at the right times. Dr. Sachin Panda's work about eating according to your circadian rhythm, what I've noticed is the earlier I eat in the day, the better my sleep is. So if I eat within 3-4 hours of sleeping, my sleep scores are affected. My CGM, my continuing glucose monitor, shows, that my glucose is much higher that night, which obviously increased levels of glucose while you sleep firstly affects your sleep quality, I'm sure. And then secondly, you're just not getting this low glucose level that we need. We obviously don't want it too low, but we don't want it spiking, being too high and causing endothelial damage in all our arteries, causing inflammatory spikes while we're trying to sleep. So tell me a little bit about circadian rhythm and just eating and making sure that we get up and open the curtains and watch the light and when to eat, Dr. Stella.
So the circadian rhythm is our body's natural rhythm, which is approximately 24 hours, our natural clocks. What the circadian rhythm supports and what research supports is that the most time that we should be awake is about 16 hours, and then we should be sleeping about 8 hours. So we shouldn't really be doing anything too much on either side of that. and those have been supported by research studies, but also by the fact that we have this endogenous clock, which obviously knows something more than perhaps we know or knew before we knew. And what it does is there are many rhythms in your body that support this whole process. So in the morning, like you said, the sun goes up, our cortisol levels start to go up. We should go outside and get that sunlight into our eyes, which signals wake up time and function time, and let's go and start the day. And then sort of towards just before the sun goes down, of course, body temperature is also having its own rhythm in the meantime. And as the sun goes down, our melatonin starts to go up again to signal that, okay, it's time to start to go to bed. And we go back to bed, and that's what should happen. And our body temperature drops just before we go to bed, and drops even further, supposedly about 2 hours into our sleep. And these are natural rhythms that should support good sleep. So one thing about good sleep hygiene is to make sure your room is not very hot, because dropping our body temperature is important for better sleep. So you can see that all these processes that evolved over time and that are innately in us do support this sort of 16-hour wake, 12 to 16-hour wake, and then 8 hours or so sleep. And then together with the circadian rhythm and your body temperature and your cortisols going up and down, and insulin also going according to what we eat, you've got then the sleep pressures from adenosine, which is the other thing that drives the sleep. So adenosine builds up as time elapses from being awake, which also then builds up too much, and as it acts on our receptors, we get sleepy. So there are systems in place that support us needing to sleep at night shortly after the sun goes down. The other thing to mention about the adenosine, I suppose, which your readers, your listeners will be interested in, I think, may be that that's exactly what caffeine blocks, which is how we combat feeling sleepy during the day. Of course, it has its place, and it helps to feel perky, after a cup of coffee. But of course, if you take it too late at night, then you will compromise your sleep.
Good.
Because it takes so long to clear, yeah.
A lot of value there for the listeners in terms of your circadian rhythm. Caffeine, some are, fast metabolizers, others are slow. My recommendation that you limit your caffeine, especially after 12 o'clock, because even if you're a fast metabolist, it's going to affect adenosine, and affect our ability to sleep that night. And a lot of people complain of adrenal fatigue or adrenal burnout because of this caffeine overload that many, many people are getting. And things like green tea have caffeine, so we've got to be aware of those, not only the coffees, and just ensure that we look after our sleep more than ever before. Dr. Stella, I really hope this message gets out there. I hope the School of Physiology really starts, I don't know if they can, from a social media drive, or who can get out there, which doctors or sleep doctors can really get out there and inform the public. Like I've said to you before when we started the recording, is that the word doctor comes from the Latin docere, which means to teach. And so our foremost, most important doctors need to teach us about how important sleep is, which I think, as you mentioned before, is really, really missing. So I do hope that you get out there with this message of importance of sleep, which is so valuable to us. I know you've mentioned a cool room, which is important, and people from Made to Thrive, our tribe will know about the ULA system, which is the silicone under blanket that gets filled with cool water that drops your temperature at night and keeps it cool. So developed by Dr. Pearl Mutter and the Youngbloods, in America, and it can change temperature as well through the night. You can set a schedule, and so it doesn't contain any electrical wires like the old electrical blankets, but it does keep you cool at night. And what I've noticed is when I've been using it for the last year or so, it has improved my quality of sleep. You sleep snug. You don't get that hot, flustered feeling in the summer. and it has improved both my wife and my personal sleep. So that's something about temperature, and Dr. Walker speaks about that in his book as well. But what other two top sleep hacks would you emphasize in terms of your sleep hygiene?
So the one that's emerging top of the list at the moment is maintaining a regular wake bedtime. So maintaining a rhythm where you are sleeping at the same sort of time, around the same time of night, and waking up around the same time. Of course, allowing yourself a hopefully 8-hour sleep opportunity. But this wake and sleep cycle, the irregular wake sleep cycle is showing to be as detrimental in health as also sort of sleep fragmentation and sleep restriction. We haven't figured out exactly why yet, but so I would definitely say that one of the main things that you need to do in order to keep your sleep, to maintain your sleep hygiene, is to keep a regular bedtime and wake up time. So that's the first important one. The second important one, so apart from restricting blue light, and so some of them are obvious, restricting blue light, we've just spoke about, and making sure you're in a comfortable bed that's at the right room environment, at the right temperature, and closing your curtains or putting blackout curtains or eye patches or whatever it is that to make your sleep more comfortable. The other sleep hygiene tips are, again, also waking up. We touched upon this, is waking up exposing yourself to sunlight in the morning, which does the opposite. So it feels counterintuitive, but it's at the right time that coincides with your circadian rhythm and helps you to, of course, restricting caffeine, like we discussed again. And the other big culprit is alcohol, unfortunately. So alcohol is the other one that we really do need to restrict because it affects our sleep badly. So we feel like it may, put us to sleep faster and that we sleep better, but we actually don't. It's less consolidating our sleep, and it tends to disrupt our REM sleep later on in the night. So
I found that when I have alcohol at night, as great as it is to have a drink with friends, it wrecks my sleep. It wrecks my REM and my deep sleep. And I might get 7 or 8 hours of quantity, but the quality is not there. I can get 30 minutes of REM and 30 minutes of deep, and I wake up and I do not wake up refreshed. I do not wake up with a clear mind, wake up with some brain fog, and it affects my performance during the day. And so what I recommend to the tribe, the Made to Thrive tribe, is that if you do want to have some alcohol, make sure that you have it in the day. Make sure you have it by lunch and give yourself enough time to process that alcohol. But unfortunately, a lot of people are having it at night, and they consume it in the bucket loads. As we noticed with lockdown, everybody was waiting to get their hands on alcohol, but it's not good for your sleep, and that's not good for the people that love their alcohol, unfortunately.
No, it's not.
Once again, Dr. Stella, thank you for your time, your valuable time. You're a researcher in sleep. You've given a lot of value to the audience and to the Made to Thrive community. I do hope and encourage that you get this message out as loud as you can, as quick as you can, as fast as you can. Hopefully there are some, just corporate incentive programs to help people, just value their sleep. I think that's the bottom line, is people don't value how important their sleep is, firstly for their health and their performance. And that's our drive at Made to Thrive, this pillar of sleep is fundamental to processes which we haven't touched on because we've run out of time, and maybe there's a part 2 of autophagy and apoptosis, what happens, how the body clear out at night, the lymphatic system, the brainwash that Dr. Perlmutter speaks about that happens when we sleep, the detox mechanism. And so hopefully in the future we can have a look at the specifics on sleep and really try and encourage people wherever we go how important this part of our lives is. The old adage that you can sleep when you're dead, I think needs to be broken down and buried itself. And so thank you for your time, and we wish you all the best. And
thank you.
To the community out there, be and stay surrounded around people like Dr. Stella Iacovides, who's a sleep researcher, who is just promoting this pillar of sleep so well in the different communities. And so from the Made to Thrive community. If you've got any comments, questions, or any suggestions on sleep, please let us know. Engage with us on my YouTube channel, SteveStavs, as well as Made to Thrive ZA, both on Instagram, and SteveStavs on Facebook ZA. And so where can people find you, Dr. Stella, now that we've mentioned my handles?
So I'm in the School of Physiology that is housed in the Faculty of Health Sciences at Wits. So that's at the medical school. And yes, you can contact me. So my email is stella.iacovides@wits.ac.za. And I do hope that we can get this important messages out there about sleep into schools, into societies, so that people learn to value. And if I can just leave you with one thing to ponder, is that if you think about the 3 pillars, which is where we encourage good, healthy eating, and we encourage physical activity, and then of course I'm saying that sleep is the most important of the 3, is that if you lose a day of physical activity or you don't eat well for one day, those consequences are far less than if you don't sleep well for one night. So it's just to put, everything in context about how important, or the thing that we're neglecting the most is the thing that we need to not neglect the most.
Absolutely, and fully agree with you. And so, once again, thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure we'll connect in the future as we declare from the rooftops how important sleep is and the value it is to our health and performance. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.